How goes it, ladies and gents? This is Enzo from Buhay Basket. Lately, everybody's been talking about The Last Dance. It's been the hottest topic in most conversations online. I mean, what's not to love about it? Anything that tells the story of Michael Jordan and the Bulls is always a welcome treat. In that decade, there was no team like the Chicago Bulls, but there were a few squads who played amazing basketball as well, like the Indiana Pacers, the New York Knicks, and Houston Rockets. Good teams, but they were all just a notch below the 90s Bulls. As they said back then, no one else ate when MJ was champ. With that in mind, let's try to rank all the 6 teams that lost to the Chicago Bulls in the finals, starting with the lowest and working our way up. Before we get to the list, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Leave a comment and hit that thumbs up while you're at it. Every bit helps. Now on to the list. The 1991 Los Angeles Lakers. Now, this is painful for me, but we'll have to start with the Los Angeles Lakers. The 1991 squad was pretty damn good. It had Magic, James Worthy, Sam Perkins, Byron Scott, AC Green, and Vlade Divac. Yet it was a far cry from the squad they had during their Showtime era. Magic was still Magic, but of course he was at the tail end of his career. The Lakers stole the series opener, but his airness and the Bulls bounced back strong. Chicago dominated LA and swept the next 4 to clinch the title in Game 5. This championship series seemed like a passing of the torch from the Lakers, one of the most dominant teams in the 80s, to the Bulls, like Magic handing over the keys to MJ. This finals win by Chicago started a new era, becoming the first title of its 6 championships in that decade. The 91-92 Portland Trail Blazers. Many people forget that the Blazers that lost to the Bulls in '92 were a stacked team with Clyde Drexler manning the wheel and steering the ship. The Blazers also had a terrific point guard in Terry Porter and were loaded like a shotgun in the front court with guys like Buck Williams, Jerome Kersey, Kevin Duckworth, and Cliff Robinson. No one could outmuscle those guys, right? The Blazers put on an impressive performance in the '92 playoffs, beating the Lakers, Suns, and Jazz to set up a championship series with the Bulls. Heading into the series, if you looked at each team's roster, you could probably think that the Blazers had the upper hand, but, they didn't have MJ. Jordan proved that the Bulls were the superior team, setting the tone of the series after he sizzled from the three-point area and gave the famous shrug. Portland just couldn't catch a break against the dynasties in the early 90s. In a span of 3 years, the Blazers made the finals twice, and they came up short in both trips. In the 90 finals, they fell to the bad boy Pistons squad. And then, in 92, they lost again to the guy who they should have drafted instead of Sam Bowie. Sorry, Sam. Ouch. The 97-98 Utah Jazz. After suffering a heartbreaking loss in the finals in the previous season, the 97-98 Utah Jazz were considered the favorites to win the title with an intact core. But now they were more experienced and more motivated. Like countless times before, Karl Malone and John Stockton ran the pick and roll to perfection and led their squad back to the finals for a rematch with Jordan and the Bulls. The series was tight with the exception of Game 3 where Chicago beat Utah by 42 points. All the other games were decided by 5 points or less. But again, Utah bowed to Chicago in 6 games. The 98 Utah Jazz were an excellent team that reached its potential. Unfortunately for them, Jordan simply did what he had done so many times in the past, and that was deliver in the clutch. Unlike the mailman who could not deliver. 92-93 Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns were good prior to this finals appearance, but they really went a notch higher in '93. At the beginning of the season, they took Charles Barkley from the 76ers, then they brought in Paul Westphal, known for his supercharged offense. With Westphal coaching and Sir Charles leading the team, the Suns became an offensive juggernaut. Keep in mind that this is Charles Barkley's lone MVP season, so he was tearing it up by averaging 26 points, 12 boards, and 5 dimes a game. And he had help too. He had Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Richard Dumas, Danny Ainge, Tom Chambers, and Cedric Ceballos. Barkley put the 93 Suns on his back and carried them into the playoffs with a 62-20 record, the best in the West, and took them all the way to the finals. But at the time, no talent was better than his airness, Michael Jordan. Chicago quickly jumped out to a 2-0 series lead before Barkley and the Suns managed a win in Game 3. The two teams split the next 2 games to set up a wild Game 6. Phoenix was up 98-94 late in Game 6, but just couldn't close it out in Chicago. And when you don't shut the door on the Bulls, they'll get ya. And that's exactly what happened. The Suns missed 6 of 7 shots late, and thanks to a John Paxson triple, the Bulls won their 3rd title in a row. 95-96 Seattle SuperSonics. The Sonics that faced Jordan and the Bulls in 96 were one heck of a team. They had the right pieces led by the 1-2 combo of savvy point guard Gary Payton, who at the time was the Defensive Player of the Year, and Shawn Kemp, who was a ruthless force in the paint. Complementing the duo were reliable shooter Hersey Hawkins and veterans Detlef Schrempf and Sam Perkins, all under the superb guidance of a great coaching mind in George Karl. They were great on both ends and were entertaining to watch. That season, the Sonics had a 64-18 record, which was second only to Jordan's Bulls. They took care of Sacramento in the first round and swept the Houston Rockets in the semis, before barely escaping Stockton, Malone, and the Jazz in the Western Conference Finals. That series went to 7 games. The Sonics were confident heading into the finals, but Jordan and the historic 72-win Bulls were just on another level that year. Chicago took the first 3 games before dropping the next 2 and clinching the title in 6. Even if they lost, it seemed like that finals run was just the beginning of something amazing for the 96 Sonics. Unfortunately, it turned out to be their peak and the beginning of their downfall. But the 96 Sonics had the right tools to win it all, and if it wasn't 96, they probably would have won a chip, but it was, and sadly for them, they had to go up against arguably the best team in NBA history. The 96-97 Utah Jazz. This was the same year Karl Malone won his first MVP award, putting up 27.4 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 4.5 assists a game. Utah finished the regular season with a 64-18 record, the best in franchise history. They were a well-oiled machine with Malone and Stockton leading the charge. They also had Jeff Hornacek, Brian Russell, Howard Eisley, Shannon Anderson as the supporting cast. Utah took care of business against the Clippers, Lakers, and the Rockets in the playoffs to set up a finals date with the Bulls, which turned out to be one of the most notable finals series ever. It was so close that 4 of the 6 games were decided in the final moments. In Game 1, Jordan nailed the jumper from the left wing at the buzzer to give the Bulls an 84-82 win. Utah and Chicago split the next 2 before the Jazz eked out a 5-point win in Game 4, thanks to Stockton's 17 points and 12 assists. But one of Jordan's greatest performances came in Game 5, also known as the flu game, and we all know the story to this one. Mike was sick before the game and looked dehydrated and weak, and at times he was staggering on the court, but he still went on to torch the Utah Jazz with 38 points. Then in Game 6, the Jazz were unable to stop the Bulls, and Steve Kerr became the unlikely hero who clinched the title for Chicago with a crucial jumper off an assist from MJ. You know that series was a classic. Say what you want about the Jazz, but they were an incredible, well-calculated team that followed their system to a T. That's it for this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and tell your friends about it as well. Peace.